Welcome in. It is Sunday, March 8th, 2026. And whether you are prepping for a massive Monday morning meeting right now, or you're just insanely curious about the hidden wires of human psychology, this deep dive is absolutely for you.
It really is. It's an incredible topic.
Yeah, because today we are looking at something that affects literally every single interaction you have. We're pulling from an amazing source today, excerpts from a YouTube audiobook transcript.
Right. Titled, How to Speak Smart Master the Psychology of Powerful Communication.
Exactly, by Elite Audiobooks. And I'm just going to drop the biggest, most surprising fact from this right up front. Mostly because it completely reframed how I look at talking to people.
It's a staggering number when you hear it.
Less than 10% of your influence come from the actual words coming out of your mouth. 10%.
Which means one.
That means the other 90% is entirely psychology and strategy.
It is a profound realization when you truly internalize it. And our mission for this deep dive is to decode that hidden 90% for you. Because we spend so much time, obsessing over the exact vocabulary we want to use.
Constantly. Writing and rewriting scripts.
Agonizing over whether to use the word utilize or leverage. But the reality here is that powerful communication is not some innate talent you are simply born with. It is a systematically learnable skill.
Which is such a relief, honestly.
Exactly. Every element of influential speaking, from the way you enter a room to the psychological triggers you activate, it can all be developed.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the source material dives straight into the neuroscience of first impressions. And this was wild. Your brain is making what they call thin slice judgments in less than 3 seconds.
3 seconds, that is all it takes.
Before you even get a chance to deploy your carefully crafted opening sentence, the other person has already evaluated your competence, your trustworthiness, and your status.
Right.
How is our brain processing all of that before a single word is even processed?
Well, it really comes down to evolutionary biology. Our brains are essentially prediction machines. They are constantly scanning the environment for threats or allies. So in those first 3 seconds, the person across from you is subconsciously analyzing your posture.
Like how you stand.
Yes, your posture, the micro expressions on your face, and critically, your eye contact and vocal tone. The data on eye contact, for instance, is incredibly specific in the source.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that because the intervals were fascinating.
The sweet spot is maintaining eye contact for 3 to 5 second intervals while you're speaking, and then 4 to 6 second intervals while you're listening.
That feels like a very tight window to navigate in real time.
It is, but it matters immensely.
Yeah.
If you hold eye contact for less than 3 seconds, the other person's brain registers you as evasive or nervous or untrustworthy.
And if you go too long?
If you lock eyes for more than 6 seconds without a break, their amygdala lights up. It feels predatory.
Like you're staring them down.
Exactly. It feels aggressive. You have to actively manage that rhythm. And then once you do open your mouth, the immediate pitfall is vocal intonation, specifically the trap of uptalk.
Oh, uptalk. I hear this everywhere. You know when someone gives you a stat like, our sales went up 20%, and it sounds like they are asking you for permission to believe it.
Yes, that subtle rise in pitch.
Even if you are stating a hard fact, that rise at the end of the sentence instantly strips away your authority. You are handing your power over to the listener, practically begging for their validation.
Which leads perfectly into what the source categorizes as the fatal mistakes of communication. 95% of people are making these mistakes without even realizing it.
95%.
And the most destructive of these, and honestly the one most prevalent in business environments, is information dumping. People have this completely backwards belief that if they just provide enough facts, enough details and statistics,
The other person will just surrender to their logic.
exactly, they'll just agree with them based on the sheer volume of data.
But wait, in a corporate setting, aren't we expected to bring the data? I mean, if I walk into a Monday morning meeting without all the stats and the spreadsheets, won't I look completely unprepared? My boss isn't going to care about my vocal tone if I don't have the quarterly numbers.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, having the data and dumping the data are two very different things. The human brain simply does not process information logically first. It processes information emotionally first.
Emotionally first, right?
And then it scrambles to find the logical reasons to support those emotions. When you just fire off a barrage of unanchored facts at someone, you are creating massive cognitive overload.
You're just overwhelming them.
You trigger immediate mental resistance. The listener stops processing your words. Not because your facts are wrong, but because their brain physically cannot organize the incoming data effectively. They feel overwhelmed, and an overwhelmed brain defaults to no.
That hits home. Just think about the last time a salesperson or a colleague just cornered you and rattled off 20 features of a new software.
Right.
You just shut down. You nod along, but internally, you were completely checked out.
You're just waiting for them to stop talking.
Exactly. And that ties directly into another fatal mistake they mention, which is emotional leakage. This is when your internal state, your nervousness, your anxiety, or maybe your desperation to get an idea approved.
It unconsciously leaks out.
Yeah, through your voice and your body language.
It is a subtle but devastating phenomenon. You might speak just a fraction too fast, or your vocal pitch shifts up just half an octave because your chest is tight.
Without you ever actually saying, I am nervous.
Right. You are subtly broadcasting low status. You are communicating that you don't feel entirely comfortable in your own skin, or that you don't fully believe in what you are pitching. The listener picks up on that dissonance immediately.
You are stripping away your own authority before the other person even consciously realizes why they aren't taking you seriously. And that concept of authority is fascinating because we tend to have a very warped view of what it actually looks like.
We really do.
The common misconception is that authority means being the loudest voice in the room, the one who dominates the conversation or cuts people off. But true authority is calm, controlled, and magnetic. It draws people in.
Because aggression is actually a distress signal.
A distress signal. I love that phrasing.
Think about the leaders you truly respect. They rarely raise their voices. Aggression is a signal of weakness because it shows that you have exhausted your actual influence and now have to resort to force or volume or intimidation to get what you want.
Right.
You haven't naturally earned compliance through your competence or character, so you are trying to manufacture it through dominance.
It's the difference between a panicked boss yelling about a deadline and a calm leader who just quietly says, we have a problem, let's solve it. The quiet one commands the room. And building on that, there is this counterintuitive concept of strategic vulnerability.
Yes, this is a powerful tool.
Because you would think that to project authority, you have to be this impenetrable wall of perfection. You can never admit a mistake. But acknowledging a specific limitation or owning up to a mistake while taking immediate responsibility for it actually increases your trust and authority.
It demonstrates emotional maturity and security. Now, it's important to clarify that you shouldn't just dump every single one of your deepest insecurities onto a client or a colleague.
Right, that's just oversharing.
Exactly, that shifts the emotional burden onto them. Strategic vulnerability is about calculated transparency. If a project is delayed, instead of making excuses or hiding it, you say, I miscalculated the timeline on this phase. That is on me. Here is how I am adjusting the schedule to ensure we hit the final launch.
You are showing that your ego is not so fragile that it needs to be protected at all costs. You care more about the truth and the outcome than you do about looking flawless.
That builds immense trust.
Here's where it gets really interesting. One of the most powerful tools for projecting that unshakable, secure authority is strategic silence. I know there are different types of pauses here, the confidence pause, the emphasis pause, and the tension pause. But that last one completely throws me off. Walk me through the strategy there, because my immediate instinct is to fill any awkward silence with chatter just to make everyone comfortable.
That instinct is exactly what you have to unlearn. In a world where everyone talks entirely too much, mastering the pause is transformative. Let's break them down quickly.
Please do.
The confidence pause is simply taking a brief 2-second beat of silence before you answer a question. It shows you are intentional, that you are actually considering their words rather than just blurting out a rehearsed reaction.
It shows you're actually listening.
Precisely. Then the emphasis pause is used right after you drop a critical piece of data. You state the bold point, and then you just stop. You let the silence sit so the listener's brain can fully digest the magnitude of what you just said.
Instead of rushing to the next slide and burying your own headline.
Exactly. But the tension pause is the masterclass technique. This is an intentional silence that allows uncomfortable emotions or difficult realities to exist in the air without you rushing to smooth them over.
Give me an example of that in action.
Imagine you are in a high-stakes salary negotiation, and you state your required number. The other party winces or says, that's a bit high. The amateur immediately jumps in to justify the number.
Or negotiate against themselves.
Right, they just fill the void. The master uses the tension pause. They remain physically relaxed, maintain soft eye contact, and say nothing. Sitting in that discomfort very often motivates the other person to propose a solution themselves.
Just because the human urge to break the tension is so overpowering.
It's incredibly difficult for most people to sit in silence.
You are literally letting the silence do the heavy lifting for you. It's almost Jedi mind trick territory. And this all really redefines what we think of as charisma. Charisma isn't about being the most entertaining person at the dinner party, telling the best jokes, or commanding all the attention.
Not at all.
It's actually about what the source calls presence intensity. True charisma is giving someone your complete, undivided attention so that they feel like the most important person in the room. It's not about making them look at you, it's about how you look at them.
This raises an important question, though. When we talk about orchestrating silence, using presence intensity, and leveraging emotional processing, where is the line between persuasion and manipulation?
That is a very thin line.
It is a boundary that requires strict self-awareness. Manipulation involves deceiving or coercing people into acting against their own best interests solely for your benefit. It is a zero-sum game.
Someone wins, someone loses.
Yeah. Exactly. Persuasion, however, is a collaborative process. It is about helping people make decisions that are genuinely good for them while also achieving your legitimate objectives. Persuasion aligns with their authentic interests.
It's the difference between a con artist and a great doctor. Both are trying to get you to do something, but the doctor wants you to take the medicine because it will actually heal you.
That's a perfect analogy.
And to accomplish that genuine persuasion, we need a toolkit. What are some of the actual mechanisms we can use to guide those conversations?
The source outlines a persuasion operating system which offers several brilliant tools. One of the most effective is assumption reframing.
How does that work?
Often when someone objects to an idea, our instinct is to argue their logic. If a client says your software is too expensive, the amateur argues the price. They pull out the ROI spreadsheets and start debating.
Yes, they're fact dumping again.
Yes. The master uses assumption reframing. They ask a question that shifts the boundary of the conversation. They might ask, if budget were completely unlimited, what would the ideal solution look like for your team?
I love that. You aren't attacking their reasoning or making them defensive. You are just inviting them to explore a different reality.
Yeah.
You get them talking about the value and the vision rather than the roadblock.
It completely bypasses their cognitive resistance. Another vital tool is simply making it easy to say yes. Humans are inherently wired to conserve energy.
We are fundamentally lazy.
In a cognitive sense, yes. If your proposal requires them to fill out 10 forms, get 3 approvals, and restructure their entire workflow, they will say no, even if the idea is brilliant.
Yeah.
You have to remove the administrative and cognitive friction, break a massive commitment into tiny, low-risk steps.
And we can't forget storytelling mastery. We touched on it earlier with the data dumping. Facts tell, but stories sell. If you want someone to understand the urgency of a new safety protocol, you don't just read the accident statistics.
They won't remember the statistic.
Right. You tell the story of one specific person whose life was impacted. The story acts as an emotional vehicle that smuggles your logic right past their defenses.
Because stories engage the sensory and emotional centers of the brain. The listener vividly visualizes the scenario, effectively experiencing it alongside you.
So what does this all mean when the stakes are incredibly high? Like when you are in a genuine conflict, we all have those conversations we dread. The underperforming employee, the passive-aggressive coworker, or even just the roommate who won't do the dishes.
The anatomy of a difficult conversation almost always breaks down because people fail to separate facts from interpretations. This distinction alone can save you from countless arguments.
Break that down for me. Facts versus interpretations.
An interpretation is subjective. It's your opinion or assumption about what happened, usually colored by emotion. For example, if you tell a colleague you don't respect my time, that is an interpretation. It is an accusation about their internal motives.
And the immediate result will be defensiveness, denial, and a counterattack.
Right.
Because nobody wants to be told they are disrespectful. So how do we reframe that?
You anchor the conversation entirely in verifiable facts. A fact is observable. You say, the project was submitted 2 days after our agreed Thursday deadline. That is an indisputable reality.
It's just what happened.
Exactly. Once you establish the objective facts without the emotional accusation attached, you create a safe space for a collaborative discussion about why it happened and how to fix it in the future. The conversation focuses on the process rather than devolving into an ugly debate over personal character.
That is such a subtle but massive shift in phrasing. It takes the heat completely out of the room. Now, we have to apply all of these rules to our reality today in 2026.
Which is very different than it used to be.
Completely.
Yeah.
We live in a heavily digital virtual world.
Mm.
If you're drafting a company-wide email, communicating on Slack, or sitting in a virtual meeting with your camera off, your physical charisma, your posture, your height, your spatial presence, it's completely neutralized. You can't rely on those biological advantages to project authority.
Digital communication requires a completely different kind of mastery, specifically what's called platform optimization. Because you are stripped of nonverbal cues, the eye contact, the vocal resonance, the physical spacing, your influence relies entirely on the architecture of your message.
The actual formatting.
Yes, in the digital space, attention is the scarcest, most violently contested resource on the planet.
I completely agree. Think about the visceral reaction you have when you open an email. And it's just one massive, unformatted block of text.
Yeah.
You instantly feel exhausted.
Yeah.
Your brain just screams, I don't have time for this.
That is digital cognitive overload. Influence in the digital realm looks like intense respect for the reader's time and energy. It means using short, highly scannable paragraphs. It is the strategic deployment of white space, bullet points, and bold text to highlight only your most crucial arguments.
So you have to adapt the psychology of presence into the formatting of your digital footprint.
Exactly. White space is the digital equivalent of a deliberate, confident pause. It gives the reader's brain a moment to breathe and absorb the point.
It is a totally different battlefield, but the core psychology remains exactly the same. You are still trying to reduce friction and guide their emotional state just with formatting instead of vocal pacing. And bringing this all together, the overarching theme here is about the kind of confidence you're building in yourself as a communicator. We talk a lot about confidence, but there is a vital distinction between outcome-based confidence and process-based confidence.
That distinction is the bedrock of lasting influence. Outcome-based confidence is incredibly fragile because it relies entirely on external validation. You only feel confident if you close the sale, if the audience laughs at your joke, or if you get the promotion.
And if you don't?
The moment you face a rejection or a negative outcome, your confidence shatters because it was tethered to something you couldn't completely control.
You are basically riding a roller coaster dictated by other people's moods and decisions. But process-based confidence, that is bulletproof. That is trusting your ability to handle whatever happens, regardless of the immediate result, because you trust your rigorous preparation, your emotional regulation, and your communication systems.
You know that even if the client says no today, you executed the interaction perfectly.
You followed your system.
What's fascinating here is that achieving this level of mastery is framed as a lifelong journey. It is not a quick hack or a one-time fix. Mastery comes from constant pattern recognition, deliberate practice, and creating consistent internal systems.
You don't magically become a persuasive speaker overnight by reading a list of tips.
No, you build an internal algorithm. You constantly gather evidence of your competence, you optimize your internal self-talk, and you gradually expand your comfort zone. You treat every single interaction, whether it's buying a coffee or pitching a board of directors, as a laboratory to test and refine these concepts.
It's an endless, fascinating process of iteration. And that leads perfectly into a final thought I want to leave you with today. The concepts we just unpacked give you a brilliant, actionable roadmap for communicating powerfully with everyone else in your life. It teaches you how to manage their cognitive load, how to use strategic silence to draw them out, and how to frame your arguments to align with their emotions rather than fighting their logic.
It's a complete toolkit.
But consider this. If you are constantly practicing these specific cadences, these intentional pauses, and this high-level emotional regulation outwardly toward your colleagues, your clients, and your friends, how might strategically applying this exact same persuasion OS and strategic silence to your own internal monologue completely rewire the way you view yourself? What happens when you stop information dumping your anxieties onto yourself and start using the confidence pause in your own mind? Something to mull over as you head into your week.